Hello, welcome to today's webinar on telling the story and showing the value. My name's Rue, and I'm going to pass it on to Tony in just a little bit. Um, uh, my pronouns are she, her. I'm a student in human services at the College of DuPage, which is a community college located in the western suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. And co-hosting with me this afternoon is Tony.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on telling the story and showing the value. My name, as we mentioned, is Tony Monette. Pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Office of Engagement at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. And we're excited to share with you today. This is the fourth of six in our webinar series with the Campus CoGenerate Affinity Network. And we want to start each session, as we always do, with a set of grounding principles for how we want to approach this work together. So with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic to our steering committee colleague, Alyssa Melby, who's the director of the Svoboda Center for Civic Engagement at St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota, to lead us in this centering exercise.
Great. Thanks so much, Tony. Thank you so much for being here. Daniel, you can go ahead for next slide. Whoever's doing it. There we go. Perfect. So first off, just welcome for those of you who are brand new to the webinar series, or welcome back if you've been here before. So one of the questions we're asking folks is for them to self-identify kind of where are they at in thinking about cogeneration. So are you cogen curious, brand newbie? Are you a cogen connector where maybe like you're doing some things trying to connect olders and youngers, but it's fragmented or maybe unsustained? Or are you a cogen champion, right? Where you've got stuff that has sustained engagement between olders and youngers, and there's a real core commitment maybe at your institution. So in the chat, we invite you all to identify kind of where you're at in your cogen journey. So again, put curious, connector, champion. Awesome. I'm seeing lots of connectors. That's where I identify myself as well. Cool. And a couple curious. Excellent. Welcome. Beautiful. All right. While you're putting those in there, we'll go ahead to look at our grounding principles. Next slide, please. So there's kind of four big things we want folks to really feel grounded in our affinity network. The first is everything that we're sharing as part of the webinar series is really to encourage you all to adapt, jump off, and go, right? That nothing is, what might work at one place might not work at your place, and that's okay. But what aspects of it might you be able to take and go with? Another thing we want to really encourage everyone is to share this work with others. Not only the stories that you're hearing about co-generational and intergenerational work, but also about the Affinity Network, right? So next time, bring along a friend to a webinar to sit next to you while you're watching it, or forward the link on to a friend. Encourage them to sign up for the Affinity Network to stay on top of what's happening and to be involved in a network of like-minded folks. Third, small innovations are still innovations, right? This is linked to that adapt, jump off, and go principle, right? We want you to take the ideas and make one small change to see where we can begin to build momentum, which leads to our fourth bullet point and our real theory of change on the Campus CoGen Affinity Network, which is really that all these small innovations that we all are taking at our various institutions are going to collectively ripple into this tsunami of like co-generational work in our campuses and in our community. Next slide. And so with our collective commitments to this, I'm going to ask everyone to find their reaction button. If you've been here before, you know how to do this. After I read the commitments, I want everyone to react. Give a thumbs up, a heart, and a explosion thing, and that whatever works for you today, to say that yes, you are also committed to this. So first, we are committed to imagining a co-generative future. I don't know about you, but I would love seeing all the things come across my screen. Next, I am committed to innovation, beginning with where my institution, and my community is at. And lastly, we collectively are committed to movement in this sphere. And so, one thing that you'll be asked to do at the end of the webinar is to think about a faithful next step that you might be able to take based on what you heard today in the webinar. So, if you are returning to the webinar series because you've been at one before, we'd love to capture in the chat what has been a step that you took in between the last webinar that you attended and this webinar today. So, and if you're brand new and this is your first one, you can go ahead and look at who's been here before. All right, thanks so much. And
Okay. So thank you, Alyssa. In this webinar, we are going to talk about storytelling as a tool for moving the work of campus cogeneration forward. Given that campus cogeneration is a fledgling pioneer movement, which is trying to coin a new language and shift the cultural paradigm around age in higher education, storytelling is a vital skill for showing its value to the various stakeholders that you will be interacting with as you do this work. Regardless of where you are in terms of stage, if you're a curious, connector, or champion, as we just put into the chat, or your positionality, whether you're student, staff, administrator, or a community partner. As Tony mentioned, we are at the halfway point in our webinar series. And so this is a good juncture for us to look at the process as a whole and see how storytelling benefits each of the steps. At this point, Daniel, if you can put up the slide, it's the second slide of the.
Hey, Ruth, did that work?
No,
Which slide? Sorry.
the second slide.
I can see it.
You can see
This
it?
is this. Yeah, this is the second slide.
Okay. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing it. Okay, no worries. Um, okay, I see it now. All right. What will what basically in this slide you can sort of see um all the sessions from each of the um webinars that we've done so far and the ones that we're going to be doing moving forward. And you can see that no matter what stage of the process you're in, that storytelling is an important part of it. And so in the first session, we talked about the big picture of the why and why now. And so a lot of the storytelling we were doing at that stage was about demographic shifts that are happening in America as a whole and how that's impacting the higher education landscape. And so that could be when you're starting to have these conversations, that can be a big part of the storytelling about like, hey, why should I bring cogeneration to where I am? And then the next session of the series, we talked about surfacing what's already there, and we learned how to do asset mapping. And so the storytelling at that stage is really about what when as you're talking to people and having conversations, talking about, hey, here's some existing resources that we have here. Here's the things that are already happening in terms of intergenerational activities, and how can we connect these things to that and leverage them to maybe start co-generating or moving, from just intergeneration or just having people of different ages in the place to actually working together toward a common goal. Then in December, we had a session on piloting a new way of being. And so at that point, we were sharing some ideas for low lift experiments that you could do on your campus, design thinking in a way to see like what are some things that I could try and pilot to see how we can incorporate it on your campus. What are some ways to do that. And then based on what you get out of that, how can you tell the story about what the results were from those pilots? And now we are here, in the next moving forward in the next couple sessions, we're going to be talking about embedding in the campus experience. And so at that point, we've done some piloting. How can we connect the results of these pilot studies to or pilot experiments that we've done to the institution's strategic priorities and the systems that are already in place to make the case for why there should be institutionalization of cogeneration on our campuses. And then finally, in March, we are going to be discussing ways to sustain and scale. So how do we grow this even further? And there we may be having to do some storytelling in which we're talking to funders and other strategic partners to grow and deepen campus cogeneration over time. So as you can see here, at every stage of the process, we're really needing to think about how we're measuring what we're doing and how we're communicating that to an audience to make an impact. So with that, we're going to launch a poll just to get a sense of where you think right now on your campus or in your organization, what type of storytelling do you feel like you're really identifying with that you're having to do? All right, almost there. We got like about a 75% participation rate so far. Okay, almost everyone there. I'm gonna go ahead and close the poll. You can see the results. And it looks like we have most people in the early stages. So they're either like in that big picture stage of being really curious and figuring out how these kind of findings that we're seeing in higher education in the US as a whole might apply to their local context and sharing stories about that. Or we're seeing folks that are looking at what resources they have on campus and telling that story about what's already there and how they might be able to tap into that. There's a few folks that are starting to do some piloting and starting to institutionalize, but we really don't have anybody in the sustaining or scaling stage. So I'll pass on to Tony to tell you a little bit more about approaches to storytelling.
Yeah, so I think where the cluster of us falls in terms of where we are in our storytelling journey as it relates to kind of the groundwork, laying the groundwork on our campuses for why this matters. I think we can approach it from a strategic standpoint, meaning that we can use kind of the data around the US, the changing population numbers to kind of ground everyone on our campus and in our institution on why this is important and kind of get our foot in the rooms and in the doors that we need to kind of build and grow cogeneration on our campuses. But I think we can also use it in practice as well, right? And I think you'll hear through some of the examples how in practice storytelling looks like taking what seems to be a very small example or experiment, which is kind of on the lower end of the spectrum, and how that can evolve and iterate over time. And I think at this juncture, we have a chance to learn about why sharing the impact of these co-generational experiences at our institution is so important, particularly given the climate that we're in. So I look at this as kind of like an onion, right? So the higher education climate that we're in is kind of the big picture, and that's kind of our groundwork that we're laying. And then we move from that big picture to what it can mean for higher education as a whole, which is kind of a subset of our larger societal ecosystem. Like how can this address some of the issues and the challenges that higher education may be experiencing? And then we move down to the kind of the granular level where we're asking, how can our specific institution specifically talk about cogeneration work and how we can connect it to the kind of the big why. And I think that's kind of the space that we often find ourselves in storytelling is how do we connect our, small action or practice to kind of a larger set of problems or solutions. So we want to build the story around assets that already exist, of course, in our institution and community, and identify areas where we could start to do those small experiments. And storytelling, as Rue mentioned, can happen at all phases in the case making phase, in the asset mapping phase, and the piloting experiments phase. So, Daniel, if you want to pull up the slides again, we have one more slide and then we'll dive into our examples. So go back forward one. There you go. So we wanted to kind of get your brain rolling around what are some different types of modalities that you can share stories. I think there are many different ways that you can share the value and the impact, and many different ways that can be presented when you're talking about cogeneration. So I think often in higher education settings, there's kind of a drive to start with more of a quantitative data research kind of element and then kind of scaffold from there. And sometimes that has the most significant influence and pull for our stakeholders that we might be telling stories to. However, as you can see on the slide, there are many ways to think about sharing stories of impact as well. So you can see here on the slide, reports and briefs, digital stories, panels and real-time conversations, blips of stories and testimonials, data snapshots, etc. So these various modalities also invite engagement from the participants of cogeneration. So those that are participating in your experiment also have the opportunity to involve themselves or engage themselves in the storytelling elements if you choose ones that are in different modes and methods. And that also gives you a little bit more buy-in and helps you to tell a more holistic story. Next slide. So when we think about the journey of cogeneration, how it began, what are some of its defining moments, and also when we tell the story of the wins and outcomes, I think people really are interested in that holistic story. And it helps them kind of see themselves in your cogenerative work if they haven't necessarily interacted with the term or even had an experience like it before. So some reminders on what to emphasize, as you can see on the slide here. Consistent language. So we're all kind of learning a new language and talking about olders and youngers and how they kind of synergize together. So we really want to talk about particularly the distinction between what it means to be a co-conspirator or co-generator versus just an intergenerational experience. We want to give people relatable reference points. So really using stories that resonate with people's lived experiences, whether that's your diverse student body, whether that's your diverse community that your institution might situate itself in. And then combining those numbers and real tangible data points with real life examples of how cogeneration has had an impact on people's worldviews, how it's preserved history, and how it's solved some real community challenges. And I think what you'll find in these examples is that even if you're in the curious or institutionalizing stage, you can move between those different stages as your programs or initiatives evolve, which also means that your story is evolving. And I think you'll find in the examples that we're going to share in just a second that those initiatives can ebb and flow and also take on many versions of storytelling to either persuade stakeholders, to help you receive more buy-in, more resources, et cetera. So before we jump into our examples, we have one more poll where we want to ask you, which modes of storytelling have you tried or are you interested in exploring? I think it's good data for us to have as well, so we can think about ways in which people have already shared their story and ways that they might want to think about adapting their stories or their impact or value for their institution.
Okay, I guess it's me. So I am Nicole Moser, and I attend Kent State University. My pronouns are she, her. Dr. Hanson, I am very excited that you are here today. My concentration is gerontology, so I was over the moon that you were going to speak today. Okay. So, let's see. I've been doing a lot of networking, and I have a great partner in this, which is just amazing. So, what we are looking at is we have a kind of some ideas on how to incorporate CoGenerate into Kent State. And we're exploring these areas, but one idea has come up that we would take with civic engagement. There are four key areas, whether it be like food insecurity, volunteerism. Um, so what the partner is actually thinking about is having a fifth avenue to incorporate in. So that would be very interesting and sustainable, I believe. And what we would like to do is to our big event for the year is to collaborate with the Conflict and Peace Studies. We have had a tragedy on our campus. We memorialize this and honor this every year, and that is the May 4th. And with times such as they are right now, and the fact that I was telling Rue with the studies that show that younger adults sometimes have a challenge with conflict resolution due to our age of technology and not being together so much. We'd like to do something with the May 4th ceremony this year. So we're going to get a meeting together, and whether this be through art or some kind of panel discussion, not sure yet. I also have networked with students, and some of them major in complex studies. So pretty excited about that. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Nicole. Sorry, we were actually going to have you speak a little bit later in
Right.
the
So I was like,
agenda.
well,
No worries. But we have it looks like there's an issue with the poll not working. So it looks like Daniel put the poll into the chat. So if folks want to just drop into the chat, which modes of storytelling have you tried or are you interested in exploring? Panels, testimonials, digital storytelling, or reports or briefs. We can get a sense of kind of like where you're at with this. And Nicole, thank you for your share. We'll definitely circle back to you in a little bit.
okay.
Awesome. So our next example, which I think will give you kind of a taste of how maybe a more intergenerational experience can evolve. We have Dr. Hanson. She's a lecturer in the gerontology department at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. As a faculty member there, she teaches several aging courses to both undergraduate and graduate students, and many of her courses include service learning and field experiences. She's also been awarded several teaching grants focused on student engagement, and in 2024 was awarded the Alumni Outstanding Teaching Award. Dr. Hanson is the author of the book Baby Boomers and Beyond, and is frequently asked to speak, write, and consult on a variety of aging issues. She's going to share a little bit with us today about her service learning course in gerontology and the ways in which she has told the story of its evolution from simply intergenerational collaboration to a more transformative cogenerational experience. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Hanson. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Good to see all you guys and hear what's happening in this good space. Just kind of broad overview, the gerontology department here at UNO takes a life course perspective to this view of aging. It's not just about maybe what we think of from terms of like a medical frail. We look at the fact that we're all aging from the moment that we're born, and we're going to have relationships with people of all different generations. And so that's kind of fundamentally or foundationally who we are. And we like students to even think about their own aging experience and the people in their lives. And so even as a department with all of our different classes, we're trying to get students involved in practicum experiences, right? Agencies, groups in the community. But one of our like foundational courses that is not just for people that are like majoring in gerontology, is an introduction to gerontology course, and it is a general education course on our campus. So it works as like a social science credit for students. It works as a cultural knowledge credit for students. And we have a number of sections of this course that we offer both in person and then online, right? Asynchronous, different faculty and adjunct faculty and grad students who teach it. So the course really has all kinds, we have students that come to the course that the advisor put them in and they don't even know what the word gerontology is. Uh, all the way to students that are like pre-nursing and they're in there because they do have it as a prereq. So I kind of set that up as the example for you, and that it's this class that's just an overview, right, of kind of aging and how that fits into their own life. And it looks at it from a multidisciplinary perspective. And one of the things, and the course has existed in some format for years and years here, like the gerontology department, we've been here more than 50 years. So I can say for me that for at least 20 years, part of the main project in that course has been students interviewing an older adult. And really, for many years, it's been to interview two different older adults so that they could see kind of the different experiences we have in aging, right? I asked students to find like somebody who's maybe working still as an older adult and someone who's retired, or someone whose health is, really declining, and someone who's still, running a half marathon once a year, whatever. So they're interview two older adults, and that's the main project. And those questions that they ask are kind of guided, like they ask mostly questions about the aging experience. How would you define aging? When do you think aging begins? Give me a little of your life story. How do you spend a typical day? But one of the questions is, what advice would you have on living a long, happy life? Something to that effect is the question. And for years now, if I back up, and as I've taught this, the experience was really about a young person spending about an hour talking to an older adult, learning from them, mining some of their stories, and then writing a narrative about this. And really, with the Community Engagement Center here at our campus and the Service Learning Academy, really I got to thinking, how can we make this more of an exchange? How can we make this, the older adult is kind of serving our student, but how can we make this whole thing more mutual and more relationship building, if you will. And I will say, kind of as you guys have talked today, this whole thing of like stages from the very beginning to moving through, and even a small innovation is still an innovation. I went to our community engagement office, our Service Learning Academy, and had those folks brainstorm with me, to kind of collaborate. What are some things we could do to kind of take this to the next level? And what came from that was this kind of dream to do this life lessons project. I knew a little bit of Dr. Pillemer's work out of Carl Pillemer out of Cornell University, and how life lessons from older adults. And um, what we decided to do, and what the students did for the first time just this past fall semester, so this is brand new doing it this way, fall of 2025, is when the students would do the interview, they would get to that question about advice. And even in class before they did the interview, we really kind of talked about what are different ways that you could get at this idea of advice that they could share. As students asked that question, they were to mind that and then submit, if the older adult was willing, a recent photo of the older adult, the quote of advice, and then like a little biography about that person, as well as the fact that they, interviewed them on such and such a date. And then all of that was compiled to create a book, Life Lessons of Older Adults, which you kind of saw the cover of it on the screen. And then we built on that, in that the last week of class, we had a kind of final celebration. So anyone who interviewed someone locally was encouraged to invite that older adult to come to campus to be a part of our class that day. The books were then revealed. Every older adult received a copy of the book, and the young people received a copy of the book as well. And it's full of the stories of the older adult, their advice, and a little bit about them. So it really kind of captures that. And that day in the reflections was so encouraging to me. Students shared, how did this experience change you? And they said things like, I'm not so fearful of aging now. Or I find out, that there's a lot of life to still be explored and living as an older adult. I'm finding out that everybody is valuable no matter what their age. And then as a part of that, older adults that were there that day, they also shared, they were like, I felt so respected. I felt so listened to and valued as we talked. Um, Older adults in the class, one gentleman shared about his real interest right now in his 70s in AI and how he's learning about it. And he knew more about it than I did. And so I could kind of bring into the class, how does this break a stereotype we have? Well, for sure, right? That we can't learn new things, that we so there was just a lot of positivity with that. Some students, I really encourage if they want to interview a family member, they can. I always have students, where a family member doesn't even live in the country. So not every older adult could be in the class that day, but they all were going to get to receive the book. Some students, they don't know and they don't have anybody in their life that's older. And so I have networked with, people here in the Omaha area to help connect the students with someone. And one encouraging thing from the day was, this student who's the older adult couldn't come that day. She said, I'd like to deliver the book to her. I want to go see her again, which I mean, wow. I mean, this is what we love as an educator because I wasn't even making her go see her again. So that's kind of how that came about. But one little thing I wanted to add, just in this whole idea of like we can kind of keep building from it. This was the first time we did it this way, and I feel like for a first time it was great. Um, but now I'm into today and a new semester, and with the help of our Community Engagement Center and Service Learning Academy, I'm going to attempt to do this with a fully online class, which will have a different kind of feel to it. We did create a digital book last time as well, and we're going to, oh, you know what, Daniel, bring up the pictures. I have a couple of pictures there. You can just bring them up while I'm talking. Um, so how could that look in an asynchronous fashion? Also, some other things that have kind of come from this, we are going to look at maybe some kind of like campaign. We haven't just come up with a catchy name yet, but like 30 days of life advice. And we're going to share those digital pages one day at a time on our social media, on our video monitors here in our college building, and hopefully throughout the campus to kind of highlight those stories. So that's something that kind of is on the horizon we're hoping to do. I'll also mention as a department, we've always had I think there's maybe three pictures. You can just scroll through them if you want to. We've had a Valentine's project that the department has done where we encourage the community students to make homemade, crafty Valentines that we then organize and give out to residents in all the area nursing homes. But I really got to thinking, gosh, that also is kind of just a one-way exchange. And so this semester, here in a couple of weeks, when my in-person class meets on a Monday at 10 o'clock, I have invited a group of older adults to join our class. And together, they're going to spend that hour and a half making Valentines together, having some conversation with each other. It will also provide an environment for students to find maybe somebody to interview for the project if they want. And then those Valentines, created by both olders and youngers, will be given to people in nursing homes. So we've really got kind of multiple generations involved there. And I just share some of those things to say, like, we're just kind of learning as we go and trying things and, looking at ways, like we're talking about, to scale it, to let the broader campus community know about it. Yeah, so I'll just kind of pause there and say, anybody got any questions or something you want me to elaborate on about this or anything?
I do see that Janet has a question in the chat. She says, love this so much. In the spirit of mutuality, I'm wondering if the Olders ever interviewed the students and get their life advice.
Yeah, I love that. Love that you said that. And I am thinking that that would be a good thing to kind of work in the mix. When we did, so I haven't formally put it into the assignment yet, but the day we did the in-person celebration, we did do some of that, and it kind of even happened organically. I had students, that even asked older adults. We talked about stereotypes back and forth, and usually we're thinking about stereotypes on older people, but the conversation came, what stereotypes do older people have about younger? And then, um, the older adults were able to ask the students some questions, just in that kind of organic format. But it has really made me think that idea of reverse mentoring. I think it's really, really um, important. So yeah, I like that. How do I find the participants? I'm kind of a networker in that regard, but we have partnerships with the Area Agency on Aging, if you're familiar with that. Every state, every county is going to have that. So we already do some work with them. And so the Eastern Nebraska Office on Aging would be ours in this Omaha area, but every state has theirs. That's a place. Um, uh, I'm aware of several faith communities that are larger and actually have older adults groups and have made kind of connections with them. And so that's also been a place that's been kind of fairly easy for me to make those connections. And of course, retirement living communities, that one I think you have to be kind of wise as you're looking into that, because uh, you can establish those relationships, but for these kind of projects, you maybe want to make sure that, we're looking for some older adults that are cognitively able to communicate in this kind of way. But I think living communities as well. Um, any kind of times you're networking, right? In the community, just bringing out oh, do you have a group or some older adults that might be interested in this? I'll also say, yeah, I thought of something with that. It's really been kind of a balancing act, because some students, most students, haven't asked their own grandparents these kinds of questions. And so we've seen over the years that it's really valuable for them to even talk to family members. Used to, I mean, full disclosure, I was like, try to find somebody who's not a family member. But then I began to discover they need to know their family members in this way as well. So, we open it up so that they can do family members, and then people in their community, people they work with. Sometimes they don't think about the fact that, oh yeah, I do work with someone that's in this over 65 category or whatever. Um, so anyway.
Thanks for sharing, Dr. Hanson. And I think what was like cool about your storytelling was that you could sort of see like even with those stages, it's not linear. You're sort of sometimes popping back and forth between um, you know, the seeing what's surfacing what's there and then piloting and then institutionalizing, then going back and piloting some more. And I also really, really loved how there's a physical book that was created out of this, and that's like a big storytelling a tool. Just circling back to the poll we did right before we introduced you of like different methods of storytelling, and I could see in the chat that people are interested in lots of different methods, and there are different methods that have more impact depending on which audience you're working with. So just love the curiosity that you're bringing to this and the open mind that everybody is collaborating with on your campus for this. Okay, so we're gonna move on to our next section, which is gonna be we have a handout link that Daniel's gonna put into the chat with some questions that we can sort of ask ourselves to guide us whenever we're in a situation where we have to do some form of storytelling about the value of cogeneration, how to show that value. And to help illustrate this framework, we've invited a couple guests to illustrate the application of the guiding questions to their storytelling efforts. So first, we will hear from Jackson Tignor, who is an architecture student at Drexel University in Philadelphia, a community engagement assistant at the Second Story Collective, and its sister organization, Writers Room, and is also a participant in the Second Story Collective's home sharing program. So Jackson is going to talk to us about the challenges and joys of strategizing on urban engagement with STEM students and university engagement with homeowners, and then demonstrating the economic value of this, and then building community through storytelling in a program that's relatively small right now. So I'd love for you to take it away, Jackson.
Hi, thank you all so much for coming here today. A little bit of background on what I do. So I work for two organizations that are kind of exist as sisters, called Writers Room and Second Story Collective. Those two organizations exist under Drexel University's larger Dornsife Center for Neighborhood Partnerships. Um, Writers Room was established 11 years ago in 2014 and hosts creative writing and arts programming that's free and open to the public in West Philadelphia. We are paired with AmeriCorps seniors in West Philadelphia, so we do a lot of work bringing together university students and longtime West Philadelphia residents to give students a chance to see kind of the inside world that they're joining as by moving to West Philadelphia to go to school. That's a kind of a solutionless problem of students moving to new cities to seek out education, but not being aware of the kind of like layers and layers and centuries of context to which they're entering. And so Writers Room kind of wants to create that middle ground, that meeting point between the university and its neighbors, to create together and talk about place and story and memory and afford some of the luxuries of the university back to the neighborhood in which it lives. Drexel University is a very STEM-driven university. It's widely known as an engineering school. Most people come kind of because of the STEM accolades that the university has. So trying to communicate the importance of acknowledging place and memory in an urban situated academic experience is our biggest mission. Um, I truly see the kind of way of life that Writers Room and Second Story Collective offer to students is the missing piece in urban-based higher education. It gives students and longtime community stakeholders a place to reimagine a world rooted in kinship and collective creative and political empowerment through direct, ever-changing practice. A little bit of background on Second Story Collective. It formed originally with Writers Room, but has taken years of working directly with the community and kind of building a serious and well-foundationed trust. Second Story Collective works with aging West Philadelphia homeowners who are hoping to age in place. And for those that go through all of the paperwork and start coming to creative writing and arts programming, we will get them up to $25,000 of renovations in their home to age in place. In addition to those aging in place renovations, we also renovate their home to accommodate a younger home sharer who's a university student or recent graduate to move in and rent a room. So the home sharer moves in, and in exchange for subsidized rent, will agree to help with specific tasks around the house, but like kind of pretty regularly. So in my experience of home sharing, I take out the garbage every Sunday. I shovel the sidewalk when it snows, if Philadelphia ever really gets that much snow anymore. Um, and overall, kind of like helping to prevent loneliness, helping to kind of be that person that I'm always there. Like I'm always extending a hand with technology, with like, please don't ever bring something heavy up the stairs because that's what I'm here for. And um, like being someone that she can kind of confidently lean on. She doesn't ever have to feel like a burden, because it's a two-way relationship that, um, in addition to kind of those things with helping around the house, each home sharing situation is different. So sometimes that looks like shared meals. Me and Julia, the woman I rent a room from, we don't share as many meals, but we'll share experiences. Otherwise, we go to the programming together, and often sit together and we'll answer questions to people who are interested in the program. I, as a home sharer in this, am the second home sharer to be placed in the program. So with me moving in, we officially left our pilot stage. Currently, we have two more homes that are under renovations, and should hopefully have home sharers moving in within the next 2 months. Uh, all of this, the pilot program is in support of a larger development that is supported by a grant from the National Science Foundation that we received 2 years ago. This is going towards building a permanently affordable housing development that is 25 homes that will be owned and will be intergenerational home sharing pairs that will live in those homes forever. Um, this development also has a grocery store and as well as other community spaces that have been kind of lacking for a long time in the Mantua, Powelton, Belmont, and Parkside communities. Those four neighborhoods that immediately surround campus have about 35,000 residents, so it's not small, but it's not huge. Our monthly workshops or our recurring workshops can pull from between 30 and 60 people on the ones that happen on a recurring basis. And we also have kind of more unique one-off workshops that will pull between 3 and 15 people. Drexel University finds itself at the edge of the University City neighborhood in West Philadelphia, which kind of only got its name during the 1960s in urban renewal. It used to be the Black Bottom, and now it is mostly university buildings and um, University of Pennsylvania, as well as Drexel University, as well as Temple University, all kind of wrestle with their impact on the surrounding communities. So we're hoping to we're hoping to continue to develop a framework that can be tailored to any context. Um, Going forward with Second Story Collective specifically, we're really hoping to see that kind of leave the umbrella of the university and become a larger framework for the whole city of Philadelphia. Our work currently is very heavily context based on the few neighborhoods in which we work. But there are longtime community residents in every community and really just need that, not that hand holding, but that encouragement and motivation to take this step and see themselves as a change maker in their community, as somebody that wants to stay and wants to see it continue to thrive rather than getting out or allowing the change to happen because we feel small in the process. But that's a little bit about Second Story. I would love for anybody that's interested in learning more. I'm a resource to reach out to. I think that it's a lot simpler and a lot less foreign than it seems to hear about it, like living in it and kind of communicating this with students as well as homeowners. It feels very foreign, but kind of once it clicks for people, it almost immediately feels familiar and doable.
Thank you, Jackson. We do have a question in the chat from Eunice. Eunice, I guess, had a chance to visit the writers' room last year and meet Carol and other AmeriCorps seniors engaged in the program. And she loves the work that you're doing. Her question is, what are concerns that students have about participating in the home care share program, and vice versa? What are some concerns and fears that olders have, and what has been your response to that?
Drexel has a very long history of lying to the communities that surround it. So the longtime like community residents are the ones who have seen the most of that. And it's a lot of the work that we do is spending a lot of time trying to say like, we aren't lying to you this time. Like this time you are the center of everything, that we're not looking at the university as the one to benefit right now. We want to see you as the one who benefits the most from this and kind of reaffirming that and um, kind of taking those baby steps, like having a light touch is really, really important with the work that we do. And it has to be human. We actually did work, we had a meeting earlier today and um, one of my superiors said that we start with relationships, not data. And that I felt like was a really good way of describing the work that we do. It was when we set out to take on Second Story Collective, we ran into the issue that most longtime residents of Mantua are not homeowners. And that was something that we had not realized when we set out on this goal. And so that massively narrowed our scope, and we have kind of developed the framework for that to work with renters, but it's not something that landlords typically jump on. Students participating in the program are usually very concerned in losing their college experience, or like thinking that they're kind of like moving back into a home and are going to have to live in the context of home, which is it's true. I'm not having parties at my first off-campus apartment and all of this kind of stuff all the time, like a lot of college students want to do, but it's a sacrifice that like we are very clear to students, it's a sacrifice you have to be willing to make. Um, to me, I see it as like the meeting point between the university and its neighborhood, and that Second Story Collective is like one way of imagining what it looks like for us to both live in a way that's acceptable to one another. That like Julia, who has lived in this community forever and ever and doesn't want to change to kind of see a better future with Drexel because she shouldn't have to, um, is putting it upon herself, is okay with like allowing to see her own life change kind of for a better future. And that's what we ask of the university students as well. I entered the program with that in mind, and with that at the front of my mind of understanding that like I'm putting a foot forward on behalf of the university now and on behalf of this program. So I wanted that to be an incredible foot forward. So for example, every month when I get her my rent, I bring her a bouquet of flowers because it's a drop in the bucket from what she charges me for rent. Or for Christmas, I crocheted her a hat. And her birthday just came, so this Sunday we're going to see a dance show because a friend of a friend was able to get us tickets. And so it's like those little things where I'm understanding that it is on me to not only like say, hey, this is the moment when the university or a product of the university is finally going to be about you and is going to be about in support of you. Um, in elders, like I had said, like they are our biggest skeptics because they've seen the most of Drexel's long history. So something like that is really trying to communicate that like please come to writers room programming and come to our workshops and see that breakdown of community members to students usually ends up looking like 80-20, 90-10, which is incredible to see that you're coming into a Drexel space, you're coming into something that has felt like a weight of oppression for decades. And actually it's all about you, and you've got the university students that care the most and that want to put the most of themselves into this work that are the ones showing up. Um, so it's I think the kind of the proof is in the pudding at the end of the day. It's like it's really about getting people to kind of get over that emotional or kind of internal inhibitions and come to programming and see it in practice. And that's where you really see it start to click for people. It's it's really like Julia always drags her feet when I try to convince her to come to the workshops, and then she sits next to me at the workshop the whole time, and she's saying like, why didn't you tell me about this sooner? And I'm having the best time ever. And we come home after the workshop and she wants to talk about every moment of the workshop again and say that this part was the best, this part was the best, this part was the best. And it's like helping her just kind of internally feel that like, oh, this is something I need, and this is fulfilling something I need that I didn't know could be fulfilled in this way.
Thank you, Jackson. That was such a rich story. And just to draw a through line to like what Dr. Hanson was talking about, it sounds like having these experiences, or if people, the proof is in the pudding thing that you said, when they jump in and actually have these experiences, it actually changes the narrative for them. And so, Dr. Hanson had mentioned how it changed the stereotypes some people have about like, hey, old people and working with AI, and we're seeing how both students and the homeowners and home sharers in this case are maybe um changing narratives about what it means to be with each other through this program. So I really love that. There is one more question in the chat for you, Jackson, if you want to check it out. We don't have time to
Yes,
to
I
talk
saw
to him.
I saw Philip's question, and I will be brief because I know I've been going
Yeah,
on.
sure, sure.
Philip, we have a huge presence of our community elders involved in the process, and they have always been. We have longtime community elders. Actually, one of the women that the Julia, the woman I live with, grew up with, who she's actually told me is Mantua's kind of OG busybody, has been one of our kind of most central advisors in the project since day one. And all of our work has always had like probably at least 50-50, if not more, seeing more elders than young people kind of designing the process. And yeah, so we also do a lot of work. The design process for our renovations are also done by an architect in the sustainability department at Drexel, who also teaches several classes on aging and design.
I love that. We're truly in a place of working co-generatively at this program. Okay. So we're running really short on time now. So I do want to circle back very quickly for a second to Nicole right before we wrap up. So our other speaker who already you kind of had a chance to hear from already is Nicole Moser. She's a non-traditional student at Kent State University in Ohio. She's also one of our co-gen student ambassadors, and she's the outreach chair for the gerontology club at her school. So as you heard her talking a little bit earlier, she's been networking with the Civic Engagement Office, the Recreation Center, the Department of Conflict and Peace Studies, the Intercultural Studies Program, and the Town and Gown Association to sort of do coalition building at Kent State on cogeneration. And so she's working right now on an initiative to host an intergenerational storytelling dinner, which would help commemorate the shooting tragedy, which killed four students during a Vietnam protest at Kent State on May 4th, 1970. And so we know that social justice issues like this have importance and relevance for folks across the generations, especially since these issues continue to play out today. And so, Nicole, if you just want to, we don't have a lot of time. We're
Okay.
like about 3 minutes out from the close, and we still need to wrap up. But if there's one quick comment that you'd like to make about storytelling and the approach that you took to it, we'd love to hear that right before we wrap up.
Okay. And Jackson, thank you. You've given me a lot to chew on. That was really exciting. So that's great. I would just say that I've been networking and I have so many ideas, and Kent State has so much potential. So with that, what I'm thinking is I am the community chair for the community outreach chair for the Gerontology Club. And part of my office position is to find events for olders and youngers to come together. So whereas the president wants activities where, say, we go into an assisted living or a community center and we did a bingo kind of thing, something along the lines of that. But I want to do things with Main Street Kent, which is the Town and Gown Association, bring our community in. They did a long table dinner last year. And also, I think that, the students can learn from the business owners down there, and it can be mutually beneficial and contribute to interaction and learning. So, shared experiences there. So, that's my idea for the Gerontology Club. As far as when to do the May 4th, bring something in there. Also, some housing was initiated previously, and I'm going to network with the person to maybe bring that back. There are just so many things. It's just like a pot, and it's all right there. And I'm just trying to filter through it and see where we're at and what all we can do at this point. So, yeah, it's great. Even like things like, say, I'm in my quantitative research class. So what am I going to do? Well, any opportunity that I have as I'm doing research for my class to bring in research from CoGenerate, of course I'm going to, because my ultimate goal is to fight ageism and for us to bring these perspectives in. So I really like the idea of, coining the phases, like building momentum. And so, however I can contribute to that on campus and get that going, I'm all for it.
Thank you, Nicole. Really appreciate you. So yeah, Nicole's a really good example of how somebody kind of in the early stages, and as we saw in the poll, a lot of us are in the early stages, can bring storytelling to these small networking interactions, 2, 3 minutes to up to, half an hour meetings that you're having with people across your town and across campus, and bringing in examples from research and other institutions to help sort of make that case. All right, so we are at the hour. Really appreciate that we don't have a chance to do the full wrap up that we normally do, but as Alyssa put in the chat, if you have an idea for a faithful next step you'd like to do, please think about that and drop it into the chat. And that handout that we sent to you is a good tool for you to use to think about how might storytelling be something that you need to do for that fateful next step that you're deciding to do? And what are some questions that you can ask yourself, and what factors might you need to consider to be successful in your storytelling in order to achieve that step? Um, so we're going to launch a closing poll right now to get your feedback. And we really appreciate it because that allows us to get a sense of how to continue to improve our offerings for you. And then our next webinar will be on Wednesday, February 11th. It will be about embedding in the campus experience, and we will explore how to make cogeneration a part of teaching, advising, community engagement, and student life, but providing strategies to institutionalize and align cogeneration with the core systems and priorities of an organization. So we hope to see you there. And until then, have a wonderful month. Look out for emails from Daniel and the rest of the team. And thank you for coming today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.